Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Neve and I hope you stick around. If you do plan on sticking around and if you do like this video, it would mean the world to me if you would give it a like and subscribe and stick around. I really would appreciate that. In today's video, I'm going to be taking you through my bookshelf to show you my favourite books. This is obviously a list that constantly updates, but I'm going to tell you what currently are my all-time favourites, and maybe in a couple of months or a year or so I'll film this again and we'll see how much the list has changed. So as you can see behind me, my bookshelf. So there's this one big one, and then I have another big one off frame of the camera, and then there's this little one in the middle, and I'm trying to fill it all with books, but currently this is my stash. So let's just jump straight in and I'll take you through my favourites. My first, I'll move these out of the way actually, they're little library cards so that when I lend my books to friends I can keep track of where they are. And I have my very own TC stamp. It's quite exciting, quite exciting. I'm trying to move these out of the way. So the first book that I'm going to be talking to you about today is Aristotle and Dante, Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alire Said. I don't know how to say his last name and I feel really horrible. Hopefully next time I talk about this book, because there definitely will be another point at which I discuss this book with you, I'll have learned how to say his name properly. This is my favourite book, point blank, of all time, and it has been for about 2 years, I think. It is just beautiful. This book follows a teenager called Ari who is feeling a little bit dejected by the world and his family. He doesn't really feel like he fits in. He doesn't understand his family. He's struggling to communicate with himself but also with the people around him. It's all very difficult for poor Ari, and he meets a boy called Dante at the public swimming pool, and they forge a really beautiful friendship over the next couple of years of their life, which are not without struggles. This book is stunning, both the story and also the way it is written. This author has such a poetic, lyrical style of writing, which I didn't think that I would enjoy. Actually, before I read this book, would hear other people say that about books, but honestly this book is just so heartbreakingly beautiful. Even the moments where you're like, oh my god, this is the most horrendous moment ever, this is so sad, it's still beautiful. The characters are so human and raw. I feel like when I read this book, and also when I'm not reading it because it is such an important book to me, that the characters jump straight out of the pages and like make a home in your chest when you're reading it, and there's just no hope for you of being able to disengage or look at it from afar. You're just so sucked in immediately to these people and their lives and their stories and their experiences. I love this book so much, and it is the first book that I will recommend to anybody ever when they ask me for book recommendations, because I just think if I can impart one book onto the people around me, it is always probably going to be this one. I definitely recommend that you read this one, and if you get it and read it soon, you're just in time for this long-awaited sequel that is out this October. I'm so excited. Read this and then read the sequel and then read everything else the author has written, because he's wonderful and this book is wonderful. It is also wonderful actually because it is an own voice novel. It is about queer Mexican American teenagers and it's written by a queer Mexican American man. It's just beautiful, and it's so lovely to have such passionate representation of queer people, which is obviously the sort of standpoint I have the right to speak on, but I have seen online lots of people who have such a connection to the race and ethnicity elements of these characters and the way they're written, so read it. And I'm going to move on to this book here. I've already talked about this book on my channel, so I'll try and keep it brief, but this book is called LMNOP by Mark Dunn, and the premise of this book is that on the island of Nollet there is a statue of Nevin Nollop, who is the man who came up with the sentence, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog," which is at the time was the shortest sentence to contain every letter of the alphabet with like minimal repetition, and the letters of the sentence start falling down from the structure and things on Nollop begin to fall apart as the officials of the island start banning the letters from use as the letters start to fall from the statue. This book is so fantastic. It's so smart. I think it's very well written. I was so impressed the whole way through, and I think it's done so well because you don't even realise that the letters are going missing until you're reminded, and then you're like, oh my god, I've just read 5 pages that's not got any of this letter in it, because the book is written through letters that the characters send each other. It's just wonderful. It's so good. I think it's so clever. I was just so impressed. I was and still am just very impressed by it, and I definitely recommend it. It's a nice one to get your brain working because you're like, wait, they did use that letter? Wait, they didn't use that letter? Oh my goodness. And then you like go looking for it. I just want to apologise actually whilst we're here for any noises in the background. There are workers I think out the back, and unfortunately I can't do anything to stop that, but I hope they quiet down soon. Next up missing from my bookshelf, it's currently actually away on an adventure, is The Pillowman by Martin McDonagh. So I can't actually show you it physically, but The Pillowman by Martin McDonagh is not actually a book, it is a play that follows the interrogation of a writer in a totalitarian state when the content of his short stories start to bear a striking resemblance to a number of child murders happening in the town. Yeah. I just love the play so much. I've spent 3 years doing it in school now. I just have such a connection to the piece and the characters. I've spent so much time working on it and analysing it and using that text to push myself as an actor in ways that I never thought when I started taking drama I would ever have to push myself. It's just wonderful. I think the author has such a distinct style when he writes. Martin McDonagh, his style of dialogue that he writes in his plays is just fascinating, funny, and it's sharp, and I think his plays are so easy to just get lost in and to just like create so vividly in your head, and I just think it's wonderful. So unfortunately I could not show you that play, but I could not leave it out. Next up is a book from my younger years, but one that I still hold very near and dear to my heart, and it is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. As you can tell, there's some good old discoloration on these pages because I think I've read this book definitely upwards of 10 times, maybe reaching closer to 20. I went through a phase where I would just finish it and then immediately start it over again. I did try and annotate it actually, but at the time I wasn't really sure how to annotate books, and I was like scared of ruining it because the concept that I could like get another copy really scared me, because this copy has so much sentimental value. But yes, this book, if you don't know, follows the story of Violet, whose sister has just passed away, and she's really struggling with how to live on without her sister by her side, and Finch, who is struggling with life and knowing how to live it, and this fear of this thing he calls being asleep, I think, which from my perspective is like a depressive episode, and his awake is what I would perceive as a manic episode, but he doesn't know that, and it just follows them as they come together and try to navigate how to live on through your struggle, and how possible that is or how possible that isn't, regardless of who's in your life and what it is that you're desperate to hang on for. It's just a beautiful, heartbreaking story, and I think what makes it so much more important to me, one is knowing that it's a true story. I think that really made it hit deeper for me, knowing that this was something that the author had lived through. This was like her lived in experience of just pain, but also beauty, and how those things sometimes can coincide. Not that pain is inherently beautiful, but sometimes that you can have both. And also I think I read this book at exactly the time that I needed to read it, and it just gave me an escape but also hope despite its, again, pain. I just think this is a beautiful book and I always recommend it, and a lot of people, I think, as I get older, look at me weird when I recommend it. People are like, that's like a 2014 like Tumblr book, come on, we've moved on. But I haven't, so it's still here. The next book I'm going to recommend is actually, I'm recommending the series but don't want to hold them all up. That is The Foxhole Court by Nora Sakovic. I am premising this one with, this is perhaps not a good book, in the sense that I do not love this book for its literary genius. I don't love the book for how well it's written or stuff like that. I do think there are moments in this book where the grammar definitely is quite off, and there's too much telling and not enough showing, and things like that that normally do turn me and turn other people off of a book. However, the characters in this book and the way the characters interact and the arc of some of these characters drew me in so completely that this series remains one of my favourite series of all time, despite its plentiful language flaws. Neil Joestin, the protagonist of this story, I couldn't let him go. I still haven't. I read this book almost 3 years ago and I think about it every single day. It has become like it's like beyond a phase. These characters have like wormed a way into my life in a way that I didn't expect when I read these books. I can't let them go. Their stories are just so painful, but somehow there is so much hope and love that you just can't leave until you get to see more of it. I don't know, I don't think that anything I say about this book will ever be able to describe why I love it, because I so understand and have so much kinship with people who do love these books. I also have a lot of understanding for the people who hate these books. I get it, but I just love them and love these characters, and cannot see a day where in the future where I will be able to let these go quite yet. A warning though, these books contain literally about every trigger under the sun, so I would go, I don't know if it's on Tumblr, but if you Google, the series in its entirety is called All for the Game. If you Google All for the Game Nora Sakovic trigger warnings, you'll get the full list. But I am telling you now, the full list includes literally almost everything that you could possibly think of. I would not recommend this book to someone who is sensitive to violence, or just look the trigger warnings up before you read this book and prepare yourself. I went in blind and I probably shouldn't have done that, and I'm very lucky that triggers that I do have are quite obscure, so I was okay. But I know a lot of people who tried to read these books and it done a lot of damage, so please just keep yourself safe and be careful. They were written in and set in the early 2000s, and it is not an excuse, but there is a lot of use of language here that is not acceptable. Also, please be aware of that. There's a heavy use of the R slur by one of the characters, which is disgusting, and I do not condone whatsoever. So again, just please keep yourself safe. Next we have Too Much Is Not Enough by Andrew Rannells. Again, I've already discussed this book, so I'll try not to spend too long on it. But this book is Andrew Rannells' memoir following his journey as a teenager up until he made his Broadway debut at age 26 or 27, I think. Some of the stories are really quite horrific and very personal and, you know, contain some really heavy stories, but I think overarchingly it's always just lovely to learn people's stories and learn their progress and see the journey to where they are now. One of my favourite things to do ever is to learn about actors. I spend most of my free time watching interviews and listening to podcast interviews and reading up about actors and directors and the like. I'm really getting into memoirs recently, and this one is one of my first, and I think will remain my favourite for a very long time, because I'm a massive fan of Andrew Reynolds and his work, but also his voice, the way it comes through his writing here is just really nice. It's kind of funny but very self-aware, very honest, and that made these essays really easy to read, even when what you were reading about was quite hard to stomach. And it definitely made me respect him more. I think you always respect someone more when you learn their story, I think, and getting to learn who they are and what they've done and how they've become the person that they show the world now. I definitely again recommend this book to any fans of Andrew's, but also theatre fans or just people who like to know about people. It's a very nice book, and I genuinely don't think you need to have a lot of pre-existing knowledge of Andrew to be able to read and enjoy this book, so I definitely recommend it. Next up, and I think lastly for today, is More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. This book destroyed me. I'm quite good, like, you know, guessing how a book's going to end, or having like enough of an idea of how this book's going to end. No matter what book I'm reading, if the ending is sad, I still cry like an absolute baby, because I cry at everything. But how I thought this book was going to end happened like halfway through the book, and then from that point on I went through it. I was like, what is happening? Oh my god, oh no, oh my god, yes, oh my god. It was just, I could not get a handle on what I thought was going to happen. I was so shocked. I was so invested in this character from the beginning, but then even more so when I realised that the ending I thought he was going to get was not at all the ending that it appeared was coming, but I couldn't figure out what it was that was coming, and it just kept me so gripped. This book was just plain agony, really, but somehow it was also, again, quite beautiful, and I think that's got a lot to do with Adam Silvera's writing style. I read another of his books recently, and I have some on the way, and the way he writes people is so honest and so accurate that I think that even reading people go through the worst moments of their life, which is arguably Adam Silvera's favourite moments to write about, you can't help but need to be there to go on that journey with them, even when you know you're setting yourself up for pain and nothing else. I definitely recommend Adam Silvera's books to literally everybody, but be aware that you will cry. They hurt a lot. So that is today's last book. I'm just going to chuck that back in my shelf. So there, that was my current all-time favourite books. Maybe I'll do another one in like 6 months and we'll see what new ones are on the list, see if any have been taken off of the list. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope it was enough to make you stick around. If you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know how you felt about it. If you have any suggestions for videos that you'd like to see in the future, feel free to leave them in the comments. And I'll see you next week. Bye!